This video was made possible by viewers like you over on Patreon. Check out the link in the description to hear how you can help make shows like this be even more amazing. Hey everyone, Gaijin Goomba here, and welcome back to another episode of Rich Samurai.
So last time we had a look at Amino Uzume, the kami of mirth, dance, and dawn that cunningly used her curves to save humanity not once, but twice. And now the newest iteration of the Pocky and Rocky franchise capitalized lock, stock, and barrel on this gal's folklore with a character of the exact same name.
Today though, I want to look at just one more character from this game that represents the other side of the coin when it comes to strong women in Japan. Hotaru Gozen and her one-on-one connection with another deep lore figure from Japanese history. When it comes to Hotaru Gozen's plot and game, well, it's fairly irrelevant. Her introduction explains that she's technically from long ago seeking resurrection, but was tricked by the demons Pocky's been fighting all game long. And while that's worth putting a pin in for later, that's about the extent of her role in the story that's of any real consequence. Like Pocky, Rocky, and Amino Uzume, who we've analyzed previously, it's design and functionality within the game itself that gives Hotaru Gozen her multiple levels of cultural inspiration.
Now at this point, I'm sure there are some of you who either saw the title of this video or got this far watching and are thinking, okay, why is this important? To which I say, well, if you're any fan of samurai history or badass women, no one in Japanese history encompasses these two things like Hotaru Gozen's real-life inspiration, Tomoe Gozen. To quote the Heike Monogatari, which chronicled the events of the Genpei War, it stated that, quote, Tomoe was especially beautiful with white skin, long hair, and charming features. She was also a remarkably strong archer, and as a swordswoman, she was a warrior worth 1,000, ready to confront a demon or god mounted or on foot. She handled unbroken horses with superb skill. She rode unscathed down perilous descents. Whenever a battle was imminent, Yoshinaka sent her out as his first captain, equipped with strong armor, an oversized sword, and a mighty bow. And she performed more deeds of valor than any of his other warriors. Now, to put all that in actual perspective, she was the commander of 300 samurai within Minamoto no Yoshinaka's army, and she took that force of 300 against over 2,000 samurai of the Taira clan back in the Genpei War, and drove them back to the western lands of Japan in 1182. She and her lord Yoshinaka pushed all the way to Kyoto, where he proclaimed his desire to become the new head of the Minamoto clan. This caught the ear of his cousin, Minamoto no Yoritomo, and Yoritomo wasn't going to take this claim to power sitting down. 2 years later, Tomoe Gozen and Minamoto no Yoshinaka would face down overwhelming odds against Yoritomo, eventually losing their entire army down to the two of them and 3 others. Yoshinaka looked at Tomoe and told her to flee. She instead looked at him with burning determination, saddled up on her horse, rode out to a pocket of 30 samurai under Yoritomo, targeted the biggest, strongest looking one, leapt off her horse, and decapitated the guy before they even hit the ground. She was an unbridled badass made of equal parts vicious tenacity and hardened, tempered skill. Now, admittedly, while texts like the Heike Monogatari tend to romanticize the things within their subject matter, the description of Tomoe Gozen and the stories written about her in this book were likely not far off from what really happened in the 12th century.
Nor is her video game counterpart. In fact, while I can't exactly prove it, I think this little snippet from Tomoe Gozen's description in the Heike Monogatari is what fully built Hotaru Gozen in her entirety. So, let's back up for a minute. What broad physical characteristics do we have for Hotaru Gozen? Well, first off, despite the very vicious look in her eye, she actually is pretty cute by most anime/manga standards. And the first thing that the Heike Monogatari talks about with Tomoe was her near-flawless beauty. Then we've got Hotaru's armor, which, thanks to the insane preservation of Japanese art through the millennia, we can identify based on the armor's design that it came specifically from the Genpei War, the war that made Tomoe Gozen a warrior of legend.
Dude, it's actually nuts how completely one-to-one Hotaru's armor is compared to what Tomoe likely wore. Like, let's do a side-by-side here. In both of these, we have large sleeves that padded massive sode pauldrons, a boxy-like lamellar armored skirt known as the kusazuri, a plainly designed chest piece called surubashiri, and finally 2 distinct strips of chest armor attachments known as the senda no ita and the yubi no ita. It's all freaking there, and we know for a fact that these were aspects that were mostly absent of armors that came before and after this time period. Thus, this gal has to be Tomoe.
But there's far more to these connections than the broad strokes. For example, all of Hotaru's in-game weapons and abilities. Hotaru's basic attacks is the rapid stabbing of her Naginata, which is kinda curious considering this game is a near bullet hell shooter in places, and this game is advertised as a top-down shooter. But regardless, it's efficient. hard-hitting and possessing a strong range for a melee weapon, with the same strengths that the Onobugeisha, the warrior women who defended their homes while their husbands went off to war, would use to defend their own lands from bandits and even other armies. And while most Onobugeisha would use this weapon, there is a fairly interesting connection between Tomoe Gozen and this weapon in particular. There is a literal design of Naginata that has her namesake. Where other Naginata have less of a curve to their blade, making them almost indistinguishable to Yari save for their single edge, Tomoe Naginata have a much larger swooping curve which allows for easier slashing. And Hotaru Gozen's Naginata in game? Oh yeah, that's a big curve.
It's kind of funny though, because despite Tomoe Gozen being depicted constantly with a Naginata, her weapon of choice historically was that oversized sword previously mentioned in the Heike Monogatari. Likely something near the size of an Odachi. And hey, guess what? That's the secondary weapon that Hotaru uses in game. A seemingly massive sword that she holds aloft in her introduction.
Yeah, and about that, I know this is purely opinion, but I honestly thought her secondary Odachi weapon in game was far more useful than her default Naginata attack. I mean, she freaking sweeps with this thing in a 180-degree arc, and it has the longest reach of any character's melee weapon. It also has the ability to reflect projectiles, so whether it was intentionally designed or not, just like Tomoe Gozen who preferred the Odachi, yeah, Hotaru Gozen's Odachi absolutely is better than her Naginata in game. Now finally, we come to her last comparable weapon, her attack augmentation, Rapid Fire.
Aw, you mean the purification charge New Moon Slash that obliterates enemies and bounces projectiles isn't real?
Ha ha. For real though, the only projectile that Hotaru Gozen gets in this entire game requires you to mash attack as fast as possible. Done quickly enough, she pulls out a bow and just Legolas blasts a bunch of arrows with properties depending on the current power-up you have. I assume something about attributing Hotaru Gozen's skill to the weapon. This too was a weapon key not only for Tomoe Gozen, but all samurai in the Heian period in Genpei War. We've already extensively covered the concept of Kyuuba no Michi in our other Witch Samurai videos, so I'll just say that the perfection of skill with the bow during this time was paramount, with certain samurai in historical texts even saying that they had lessened concerns when approached by warriors with swords and not bows. Bows were just that key to samurai at this time. So of course Tomoe Gozen, being a pinnacle of samuraidom, would have extensive skill with the bow. Again, it's even mentioned in that blurb from the Heike Monogatari. Quote, she was also a remarkably strong archer, and as a swordsman she was a warrior worth 1,000, ready to confront a demon or god mounted or on foot. Combat aside though, there are two final things that Hotaru has that really connects her with Tomoe. The first one being the name of course, but I think that's pretty obvious at this point. The other however is a bit more esoteric and sad. After you get through Hotaru's part of the story in the game, she mentions she's out to get vengeance for her lord, all the while Kyoto burns around the characters. Well, remember Tomoe's lord Yoshinaka? Yeah, he and Tomoe didn't win the Battle of Awazu. Come the end of battle, Yoshinaka actually fled his cousin's pursuers in an attempt to isolate and finish off himself so his enemies didn't get that glory. Unfortunately, his horse got stuck in a muddy field and he was taken down by Yoritomo's men, driven from Kyoto and killed by the hands of his cousin. Now, considering that this is a war between family, I really do wonder if Tomoe saw Yoritomo's actions as treacherous against his cousin Yoshinaka, and if that has anything to do with the vengeance that Hotaru talks about as Kyoto lies around in ruins. This of course is not nearly as concrete as the above mentioned evidence, but it really did make me wonder.
Well, either way, it was a way for us to teach about the most badass samurai gal Japanese history, so if nothing else, there's that.
Yeah, you know what else I wonder? How in the world patrons voted a perfect 69% in favor of this topic over the others?
Nice.
Jokes aside though, I completely did not expect that result in the slightest, so thank you for letting me jump in on that topic of culture, and thank you to all my patrons who allow me to keep doing what I do by helping me keep a roof over my head as I make these videos. We might be in the middle of a summer games release drought, but that's not slowing down my ability to find all kinds of cultural topics, which includes a new yokai-focused extension of the Witcher series that I feel like a lot of people are sleeping on. So I might just have a look into that for next time. But either way, until next time everyone, this is Gaijin Goomba, signing out.